Hello, and welcome to a special edition of IPC's Policymaker Profile Series. This series is a opportunity to get policymakers' views on critical issues of the day. And today we have Congressman Tom Reed of New York. Congressman Reed represents part of New York and southern western part of New York State with is Corning and Ithaca in your district, and Jamestown. Excellent. With all the key cities there. Congressman Reed serves on the House Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over issues such as trade, tax, healthcare, and a lot of other critical issues. He also serves co-chair of the House Manufacturing Caucus, the Problem Solvers Caucus, and the Diabetes Caucus. So three important ones. Very important to us. Very important to us. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. Well, as we talked about ways and means and some of these issues, tax reform is obviously right on the agenda for the fall in Congress. And you probably have some thoughts on tax reform. For IPC, we support areas on the R&D tax credit, strengthening it to 20% of qualified expenses, making bonus depreciation permanent, and reducing the vulnerable tax rates. These are not anything new to you, I'm sure, hearing this from the manufacturing sector. But what are your views on those maybe more specific issues in tax reform, and then where you see it going this year?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's critical to recognize tax reform will occur. There's still some people out there who think it's not going to happen in 2017. I'm a firm believer. The stars are aligning. It's time to fix the broken American tax code. And so when it comes to things like immediate expensing, bonus depreciation, lowering the rates, and recognizing research and development, I think those policy provisions stand in a good position to be recognized and reinforced through tax reform. What the final version of them looks like, we still have to go through the process of legislating. But I would say I think there's bipartisan support when it comes to things like immediate expensing, i.e. bonus depreciation, because that recognizes, especially our manufacturers, cash is king. And so when you get access to your cash sooner rather than later, spreading it out over time, that allows most owners to reinvest in their businesses, grow their businesses, which means more jobs. And that's what the fundamental cornerstone of tax reform is, not just simplicity and making us competitive for the 21st century. It's about growth and creating the jobs of today and tomorrow.
Excellent. We look forward to working on this issue.
Well, IPC has been a great partner in regards to it. To all the folks that you represent, they are the backbone of what we're trying to target. Trying to target that innovative, that next generation of advanced manufacturing in particular, right here on American soil. That's why fixing the code is so critical to the future of America.
Right. Well, piggybacking on that, growing that innovative base in manufacturing is compliance, regulatory burden. As I mentioned earlier, co-chair of the manufacturing caucus, which is great that we have such a caucus in the House of Representatives. What is the caucus doing anything around that sort of regulatory complex set of issues, and what other things is the caucus focused on?
Yeah, not just the caucus, because regulations impact not just manufacturing, but entities across the country. And I think the caucus is committed to kind of taking that cost and benefit approach to regulation. But I think with this administration, you're seeing a demonstration to sensitivity about recognizing the costs that are associated with the regulatory burden that's coming out of Washington, D.C. Essentially trying to not just restrict, but restrain the fourth branch of government, which is that bureaucracy, in a way that recognizes that regulations are in and of themselves not bad per se. It's the balance, it's the reasonableness that we're trying to achieve. And I think now you see an administration and members of Congress that are supportive of regulatory reform that recognizes that there's a purpose for these regulations, but we need to make sure they're narrow in scope and they achieve the return on what the regulations represent based on a cost-benefit approach.
We like to say at IPC, smart regulation.
I would agree with that.
That's
Yeah, and I think there's also some fundamental government reform that we can look at. The RAINS Act has been around for quite some time. That's about bringing the control, that checks and balance, respecting the separation of powers, because this fourth branch has grown, in my opinion, to a size and a magnitude that is beyond the scope of what I think most reasonable legislators would like to see. And also, we've delegated so much authority from Congress to the executive branch. It's time to rein that back in and to have a congressional role in that process. So I'm very optimistic that something like the RAINS Act could be implemented long term to try to rein in this regulatory overburden that we see at the federal level.
What, in more general terms, not more general terms, but beyond some of these issues on that we're doing in the committee, especially on tax reform right now, regulatory issues, are there other issues that you're working on that may have an impact or may not have an impact on sort of small and medium-sized businesses?
Well, one of the, obviously we're a voice for manufacturing. I'm a firm believer in U.S. manufacturing again. I believe we're at the cusp of a renaissance when it comes to making it here to sell it around the world. So getting our tax policy, getting our trade policy is something being on the committee that I work on as a priority just because of the nature of where we sit. But overall, I've also been a strong advocate for energy tax policy that promotes an all of the above energy policy that brings stability, lowers the cost of doing business because you meet the energy costs by having a broad support of energy supply out there. You limit the disruptions. You have more of a supply chain that can stay in place and drive these costs down. And from my perspective, anything that can drive costs down is good for business, good for job development, but also on the energy side, don't lose sight of the national security implications. So this, from my perspective, this is a win-win. It protects American citizens at the same time promotes our job base across the country.
That's great. So, in order to get to know you a little bit better, we also like to let our members get a feel for what you like to do outside of Congress, or they could be connected, I guess. But like for example, what have you had where have you been, like whether work related or with family, on a very interesting travel experience?
Well, coming from Western New York, we're very proud of our outdoor history. So I love to fish and hunt. My son just got his bow hunting course behind him, so I'm looking forward to this summer taking him out, or this fall, excuse me, this fall taking him out in the woods and doing a little bow hunting as well as regular deer season. But on top of that, we have one of our dogs. We have 3 dogs. And, one of them's a beagle. Love to take them rabbit hunting. Been out there with the pheasants with another one of our dogs, and I just tell you, spending time with my family out in the woods, out in the field, is something that gives me great pleasure. And it's just great to see the kids grow up and pass on to them. And we have a little hunting cabin that we go to, and typical hunting cabin. It's an old mobile home that's in the middle of nowhere, and you just have some really good times with the guys around the pot on the stove and getting ready for opening day.
Very nice.
It's a good time.
Well, that's a great way to sort of end our inaugural video segment, our Policymaker profile series. So
I appreciate your
thank you, and we look forward to working with you on all these issues. And thank you for being a champion for manufacturing and sitting down with IBC and our members.
Perfect. I appreciate all of it.
Thank you.